Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm so sorry that I couldn't make this time. I had a couple of constraints, but I still wanted to make sure that you guys got this content. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at hpatterson@west.org. I'm so happy that we are doing these kind of series on building really kind of digital marketing skills. So I'm really excited to deliver this, and then we'll be there tomorrow, Friday, April 30th, to kind of help one-on-one for anybody who wants to start, putting into practice these skills. And so here we go. So this is really kind of a training on how to improve digital marketing skills with photography for creative entrepreneurs. And this is a little bit more of the advanced level where we're kind of breaking into a certain kind of feature that's built into these newer iPhones called portrait mode. And so to start it off, using your smartphone camera, a good rule of thumb is always to make sure to clean up your product. I know we do a little bit of that wipe the lens on our jeans or, those quick kind of cleaning behaviors. However, just be a little bit careful, even though that is fine and, fine to clean your lens in the moment. Try to using a microfiber cloth. It'll definitely be a lot softer on the lens and you won't have problems with scratching it or, fogginess that kind of comes from that, from harsher products being cleaned on it. So just make sure your item is free of dust, dirt, and debris. And then it'll be really to kind of test it out before you start taking your product photos or just really creative photos. Capture multiple photos first and then zoom in to see if there's any kind of like unknown or distorting kind of factors within the picture. So then you can see if that's really coming from the lens or if that's, on the object, like right here for the glare of the glass, or, just so that you set yourself up right and, you don't have to do too many post editing within Photoshop. The next thing too is to really, light should be your best friend. You should really kind of light it naturally. The best time of lighting is really to shooting with that like soft overcast kind of type of day. So stay as close as you can to the window. If the light is too harsh, then try to use like some kind of diffuser in case you're kind of getting into using a smartphone camera or the idea of just taking your own product photography. Something that you can do is using a diffuser in the form of a bed sheet, a pillowcase, depending on how the size that you want to, cover up of your window. So just try to stay within natural lighting, just because it does end up, softening the sides of your photo. It looks really nice. Don't really use flash on your camera. I said this repeatedly. If you're taking product photos, don't use really flash. It can look very unflattering and it's very distracting with the shadows that it casts. And also it can really kind of fade the colorization of whatever kind of object you're taking the photo with. So just, try to stay with natural lighting. It's going to take a couple of times. And if you end up breaking up, the day of when you're taking these photos, just be a little bit consistent and be a little bit aware of where your light source is kind of coming from. So just, light it naturally. But if you are going to be using artificial lamps, generally a pair of lights that are coming from opposite directions provides like a really nice fill lighting on an object, so that you can like wipe out a lot of those distracting shadows that happen with just one lighting source. So, you can use this with kind of diffusers, those white cards, or, different kind of shades of grayscale to help a little bit bounce that light off, and help, create a little bit more flattering shadows. So, and then the last thing too is using contrasting backgrounds. I know in the previous two trainings, we kind of talked about having a consistent background, and most of the examples that I used were actually white backgrounds. If you have a white object, it's not so best to have a white background. So because I used the example of the white backgrounds in the beginning, just, those were with colors that were very much in high contrast to white. So if you are going to be using and working with a lot of different like white objects, then just, use a contrasting background, like a dark navy, not really so much black, but maybe that has a little bit of color to it. So like a lighter, darker gray, something around there, and just being really conscious of the design in the background if you do use designs. But it's always great to kind of go with something solid and consistent, and that's easy kind of to set up and swap out. So for the next thing, we're going to be talking about taking your product photos. So more is more. We kind of talk about less is more, but actually in this case, more is more. Take as many photos as possible. You can always delete the ones you don't like later or as you go. And then just make sure that you have enough storage. And then also too, where you upload your photos to and when you save them to can really kind of impact the quality of the photos, because if it's kind of saved within a space that doesn't have a lot of space and your computer knows it or your device knows it, then it'll reduce the quality of the photo just to compress some storage that you have on your computer. So, just be a little bit cautious of that and aware of it, just because, just have a phone that has a lot of space, be conscious of how many photos you're taking. And that's as I always kind of delete as I go, because I know if I have too many photos, maybe this is a problem that's happened with you, but it takes a while when I go through my iPhone photos library. Some of the photos and videos will take a while to reload and then kind of establish its quality. So, just be conscious of that. The next thing too is to remember to keep your phone in focus, especially if you're taking those kind of in-depth, field of focus, field of depth kind of photos. So always try to, if you're using the same product and you're taking kind of different angles of it, where you're keeping the camera stable and you're just changing the positionality of the product, locking the focus can really help you when you're taking multiple items, especially when there's multiple items in the frame. So whenever you're staging it, a good example is a candle that I used yesterday. What I should have done is I should have locked the focus on the candle, but as I was kind of doing that process, there was like the scarf that was getting a lot of focus and pulling the candle out of focus because it was closer to the camera. Some of the fibers were actually being focused when I didn't want them to be focused. So just hold it on your screen and it should come up with this yellow square. And then you can also at the top of the screen, as it's highlighted here in this photo, you can actually lock the focus that way, and then unlock it the same way too by just clicking it. And then the next thing too is to forget about your zoom, because actually when you zoom in, smartphones don't actually have a great quality or even built-in technology to actually zoom into something. It doesn't improve in quality. Instead, it just essentially kind of how we are on our whenever you zoom into like a picture on your desktop that's just like posted somewhere, it just gets a little bit more pixelated. It doesn't really, it doesn't readjust to having better quality. So that's as you kind of want to forget about your zoom button, your automated zoom button on your phone. And that's the same way for both the front camera and the back camera. I know it has been improving in a couple of years with the tri cameras on your smartphone. That wasn't the case so much with just the two cameras on the phone, because each year we're kind of improving with those smartphone capabilities of the camera. So maybe I know that the Samsung Galaxy, there's one of them that performs really well on zooming in. And if you have that phone, take advantage of zooming in. But if you don't, and you kind of have a regular iPhone, whatever generation it could be, then forget about zooming in and just move your phone closer or away to help with the detailing. The other thing too is don't move the camera too much. Consistency is key for your product photos. You can see it within a lot of professional photography, is that the light source doesn't change in the angle. Instead, it's actually the model or the product, or the light is coming from the same direction each time. The only thing that they're rotating is that item or subject. So it just creates a really clean, professional images. And with some clever editing, if you do have to move your camera to get the bird's eye view, you can actually, with editing and cropping, you can actually kind of replicate that same consistency with the light source coming from the same way. Another thing too that a lot of professional photographers use that you can actually implement into your own iPhone photography is actually using gray cards. So gray cards can really help you, establish good kind of colorization within your photo, because for professional photographers kind of use it to help balance out the coloring, especially if there is a high contrast of coloring, or if the coloring between the two items is very, very close. So it can really kind of balance out that portion, and as well as like editing the image so that you're not too when we kind of edit with filters, we kind of forget the true color of what the item is. And so a gray card can really help you in that process of post-production and editing, to help you really kind of stay within the gray, to make sure that your colors are just enhanced instead of completely different than how they started. So here are just some examples. So like this would be the gray card taken at a well, still within the mind that it's actually the product that they're going to be taking the photo of, the ultimate photo. So you would just end up in the post-production or post-editing, you would just crop it to just cropping out the gray card. So a mode that I really kind of capitalized using, especially when I was just taking photos of a jewelry line and I was using models, was I was actually just kind of, I feel like it was cheating, but I think it was also working smarter, not harder. And I was using the actual implemented portrait mode. And so what portrait mode does is it simulates a shallow depth of field by using the edge detector or depth mapping to differentiate between the foreground and the background. It then blurs the background, simulating a shallow depth of field and making the foreground pop. So this is something that kind of recently launched. So funny that we feel like we've had it for a really long time when really it's just recently launched. And it has those of you who have iPhones, it has great kind of preset kind of color enhancement as well as like filters within portrait mode. And so it works best whenever you are 2 to 8 feet from the subject, and also having a lot of lighting will aid in creating incredible photos. And what that kind of just means is that your subject or model is facing the light instead of instead of their like back, or the back side of it is facing the light, where you're not facing the light. Instead your back's to the light and they're facing the light. And it is kind of with a little bit not so harsh lighting. They're not directly in the sun, but there is a good range of lighting that can help in making portrait mode really nice, just because the edge detection will be really great, and then you won't have to manually edit a lot of portion of this photo. So that for lighting, what could happen if you don't have sufficient lighting? What could really happen is that parts of her sweatshirt that are more in the foreground of the photo, that are farther away from the camera, can then be detected as the background, and then it's blurred. So then half of her sweater is blurred, or half of her face is blurred when it shouldn't be. So that a lot of lighting will help prevent that happening. And then not having flash too on the same time. So the yellow box is the point of focus. If you don't know that, it is. So it's the point of focus, and you can actually manually press where you, and overall kind of dictate where the point of focus is going to be at. And then from on the bottom, midway where it says natural lighting, you can actually as soon as you see those words, your phone is ready to shoot, because then it automatically kind of puts you in that mode and it's ready to capture. So from there, it just shows you different kinds of filters, and as well as just different kind of just I'm lost on the word. Maybe Michael will help you out at this point, but I'm lost on the word. But I kind of say it's different kind of preset filters. So just scrolling through that can really help you, figure out what's the best kind of creative point of, the picture that you want to take. And so how you can, even after you've taking your portrait photo, and say there's a little bit of, small tweaks that you have to take, because of course the first photo you take is never done. And you can actually manually change the background blur by opening up your photo app, or just your regular photos, wherever your photos lie in the library, and then going to edit, and then tapping the f/number. This is going to give you your aperture. They're measured in f-stops. And as soon as you kind of slide that scale, you can actually change the blurriness in the background. And so by doing that, again, you can go from f1.4 stop to the f16, and manually do it in that way. To kind of completely take it off of portrait mode. So say that you actually probably don't even want to create a shallow depth of oh my goodness, a shallow depth of field, then you can just turn it off by unselecting and unhighlighting the portrait mode in the top. And so as soon as that's unselected, then you can, then your photo is as if you kind of typically regularly took it without this mode on. So what you can do also too is, switch it on or off to also see the progression of how your photo has changed, because I think a lot of times when we are in that post editing side, we forget what the original photo can look like or what the changes we've made, and it could completely distort what the meaning of the photo was completely. So that's a good rule of thumb to always kind of check your progress here and there, what you have changed. So this is other ways of changing the lighting. So it just kind of aids in creating either more light or less light. And so you can do the same place right next to where that f-stop was at in the beginning. It is that little square, like that cube, with a circle within it. And that is going to help you with a range of different lighting that you can help manipulate. And so at the same time too, that there is a range of different intensity of lighting effect that you can do within each each circle of preset filters and features. So these are just some examples. So this is like studio light, which is just one scroll to the right, and then this is two scrolls from the contour light. There's three other modes, in which I think the last mode is this heavy vignette, black and white contrast ability of intensity of light. So sorry about that. I have a couple of notifications coming up. Okay. And then here too, I know we were using models and say you're not really using models during this time, but this is essentially what it looks like with, objects. So portrait mode is intended for face recognition, but it does, if you do end up like messing around with it and being really patient, it does end up taking really nice photos of in like non-human objects. And so this is how it like performs with non-faces. So the next thing to really up your you know your quality and as well as your skills as a photographer with smartphones is actually being really conscious of the color scheme that you're creating. So following a similar color scheme can really help make your website or your social media platform really professional. And that really goes with the consistency of the background to the angling of the light, the overall tone, the whiteness tone of the light that you end up using. So take that into consideration because that really can create a nice branding awareness of what and professional kind of look, just because a lot of brand identity and as well as branding awareness comes from unconscious consistency within like creating color. And so that's what is whenever you go through making your logo, you go through picking out your font. Another big thing is actually picking out your color scheme. And so this can change due to the season. It is not something that has to completely be preset. A lot of individuals do like to preset their color scheme, and therefore that is as soon as you see those colors, you recognize the brand or the business in that way. So it's just something as a person who is either taking their own business's photos, something you should take into consideration too, is because if you don't want to do a consistent background and you're just kind of taking a photo to take the photo and list it as, an object that you're selling, then, it just looks very kind of busy. It doesn't look together. It does look very much like it wasn't done properly. That does like come across. And so, just following with a certain color scheme, maybe this makes you become a little bit conscious of how your products look, side by side together when it is behind like a consistent background. And this can obviously improve different parts of your business. So yeah, but as the second bullet point kind of explains, and I've kind of touched on, is that for creative purposes, they can be there is leeway for inconsistency, and so just making sure that within that creativeness you still follow some sort of color scheme. It happens quite a bit with some social media accounts in which they do this really amazing monochromatic color scheme every couple of 9 photos, because it makes a perfect 3x3 submission of photos within their grid on Instagram. So, and this is just kind of to exemplify that. So this is like the color palette for this brand. This is on all of their business cards or their flyers, but it's also very consciously kind of taken within the the artistic editing of the photos, and as well as the staging of the the photos that are going to be on the website, or as well as on the social media website. So you can see that the filtering, maybe this is actually a purely white sheet. So whenever they did end up going into post editing, they put a kind of a pink nude-ish beige, kind of a blush color hue to the whole entire photo. And so that's one way that you can continue to achieve a color scheme, but at the same time too, they kind of got away with this because I know I've said that you should probably do minor edits that only emphasizes the color of items. For this one, it's more of like selling an experience that seems like that it really kind of is for an artistic marketing point of view. So getting away with putting that kind of blush pinkish filter on top of it isn't too much of a problem. Obviously here they kind of clean it up a little bit because the cup is still very much white, so are the flowers, and as well as the iPhone, so it's not as harsh and completely red. Instead it still follows like a similar color scheme. So all of these photos look very much together, whereas like some individuals, when they take photos and they're staging photos, the coloring of the light is completely different. So like one of them could be a lot more bluish, or one could be a lot more white, and the other one could be a lot warmer with that kind of yellowish tint. And so just going into post-production, kind of making it a little bit more seamless of, hey, this is, the color scheme that I have and I'm aware of to make. And here's just like some more examples. You can be really kind of playing with it too, just working within a grayscale of making sure that the photos that you capture, the way that you're staging these photos, it just stays within this very simplistic, gray, cool. It's kind of into like artistic terms, but like into coolish tones. So staying within that very cool blue, it's not very warm. Even the light that's kind of being, the light source is very cool and it's not so much warm either, except for within this photo, which is the only one that I feel like stands out amongst the rest, because all of them are very much white, coolish tone lighting. So, and then here too, if you don't have a consistent background, your light source is completely all over the place, and you still want to make a consistent, unified branding with these same photos, how you can do so is actually placing it on top of a solid color background or a consistent color scheme of backgrounds. So, each one of these photos, if they're uploaded on Instagram, it would look together. It would honestly look together, and it would be recognizable that these are coming from a certain place. So that's how you are able to use multiple photos, um, uh, and together if they're coming from different kind of light source. And then, another example of how, if you want to expand to more than 2 colors, you can go up to 4 colors. And I think the most that I've seen before is about 8. I've seen 8 colors for branding, to brand a business. And so it's possible with a lot of coloring, but just making sure that they complement each other very well. And so, which, individuals like Michael and myself can help you kind of establish, just because that it is a lot of, understanding how the color wheel and, complementing each other, because sometimes your favorite colors are not the best colors that complement each other. So here are some like common mistakes when photographing your artwork with an iPhone. I wanted to kind of place this in because we do have a couple of individuals who work with other people's art and maybe are taking their photos and placing it on e-commerce websites. One thing is you may be photographing the artwork in natural lighting, but the colors don't look very accurate when you're capturing it. So the solution is to kind of photograph in natural daylight, and that is really kind of taking the painting to be as close to the window, or really kind of opening the door a little bit and having a little bit more of that natural lighting coming in, while still having a little bit of like a shadow diffusing kind of feature happening as you do that. And so, these are some things that you can do, and then just kind of not being too worried about the negative space that you end up capturing, because you can always go back and cropping it. I think that's a problem that a lot of individuals have commonly while trying to capture really great colors within their artwork, is that they forget that they can crop after taking the photo, and they try to fit the whole entire photo into the screen of, as they're kind of trying to capture that first photo, as they're trying to fit everything in, making it really kind of distorted. And so, take it from different ranges of angles, as well as like depths of field. So The second one too is a distortive perspective, and this is really because say the angling of light that you're taking it within, has some kind of glare. And so based on how the lighting is and you have no control over it, you have to take kind of a distorted picture because if you didn't, there would be a huge glare on the painting or whatever the artwork is. So how you can do this is really kind of adjusting your angles. And it's really to kind of, maybe try taking an aerial view shot while laying your artwork on the floor. And this is where the grid and as well as the grid and kind of just understanding negative space and as well as just like aligning those two cross arrows together will help you really kind of straighten your photo. But at the same time too, like I had done in the very first kind of training and as well as second training where I was straightening vertically and horizontally my photo, you can do that too in post editing, and that's just within the cropping function on your iPhone as well. So if it does end up being just a little bit off and still looking a little bit distorted, you can then straighten and crop it at the same time. So to getting into a little bit of more advanced features, you have to go and dive deep into lenses. So we covered a little bit of lenses in the past training, but for this one, I feel like it's very situational because there's so many different lenses out there. One place that I really like to kind of go and explore that for your iPhone to making a little bit more different lenses is actually with Moment and their app that they've created with their to work with their equipment. They also have multiple tripods. They also have amazing features within their tripods that do Bluetooth, trigger capture. So you don't have to push the button on your smartphone. Instead, you can remotely do it with a Bluetooth clicker. And so there's so many manual features within this app. Another great thing that I like to highlight within that app was actually their exposure and focus. So it's a lot more manual because of the lens that you're kind of adding onto your iPhone. And so what they do is actually highlight clipping. And so you can see where the light is actually being highlighted within your photo in real time. And you can edit that as you go before even taking the photo, or even after you've taken the photo, you can see where the highlight's happening, especially if you are still kind of learning to develop that kind of keen eye to recognize that. And these are kind of some just videos that I've seen that can be really helpful for the individuals who are kind of doing this on a budget. Again, a best rule of thumb for that photo on the left, be very aware of how hot those lamps are kind of getting. This is a makeshift light box. They did it out of cardboard with copy paper, and it seemed like stock paper. And so what you just really need to do is make sure you don't start a fire, because that can get very hot. So just be a little bit cautious and do it in moderations of certain intervals of time that you have those lights on. So just be careful. The next one too is kind of having this artificial lighting with a ring light. So the reason I really like this example is because you can see how if you just have a plain background and you have glass, which this does look very artistic, there's just that harsh black line in the foreground, which kind of is eliminated as soon as you kind of do that sweeping effect of where you bend the paper. That's established here in the left side of this, or in the left picture. So, and it brightens up the subject of the photo. It really kind of helps, gather the light to a focal point, and it's almost a brighter picture than the last one. And with just a little bit more editing, you can create really nice highlights within certain parts of the photo. So that's the reason why I really do like this example. And you can dress it up, and just making sure that you're just moving the object instead of the instead of the lighting source and as well as the camera. So you can see it's all coming from this the lighting source is coming from this kind of angle. This next one I really do like. I apologize for the sound if it's too loud. But
photography, I got some of my product photography featured on.
He had a great kind of tip that I always kind of tell people to
I've used this for stuff that I sell online, for jobs that I've had, and if you have a business selling anything online, especially small stuff, this is really going to help you. So what you're going to want to do is go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or any other kind of home improvement store and get you some tiles. So they come in a variety of sizes. Usually they're either half the size of this, which I think is 1 foot by 1 foot, or this one is 1 foot by 2 feet. So occasionally you can find them bigger, but those are the two most common sizes you're going to find. The ones I like are the bigger ones, but the small ones work great for small jewelry or little wallets and stuff like that. They cost around $2 to $5 each, and what's nice is they come in a lot of different colors. What I like to do is stack one up against a wall and then set the other one on the ground next to it, and that way you can take a picture of stuff standing up.
So how they're kind of using that portrait mode, you could essentially do the same thing. I know he was using a DSLR camera, but as we just kind of pointed out, you can capture the same effect with your portrait mode on your smartphone camera.
Photography hack.
Oops. And this is what I was this is the example that I was pointing out yesterday with using paper and being a little bit creative with your paper to help, be a little bit more artistic with posting of different kind of products that you have. And you just don't want it to be sitting in the background or sitting in, a staged photo. This is, really kind of cool and simple to do. So this is how you would essentially do it. So you could do it like this. And I think they put if I'm correct, they had put this paper within this like frame and they just secured it and then created a hole within it or wherever they needed. So here are some free stock photos and PNG resources. I know sometimes it's really hard during this time to kind of create, store announcements that are not just, solid background and text. Instead, you kind of want a little bit of, a diverse selection of people or just items, of obscure items. And you don't want to rely too much on Google image search just because of, copywriting and trademarking. And so here are actually some free stock photo websites that I've used myself. I still use to this day to kind of help aid in creating flyers and creating kind of announcements that I need to make. And so they have huge libraries full of different kind of keywords, and as well as just like situational things that you can take stock photos for free. And the same thing for the PNGs. I've had a difficulty trying to find royalty-free or just like non-watermarked PNGs. And so I've really kind of relied on stick PNG and as well as tree or PNG tree to kind of find those kind of logos, those like really huge corporate logos, and help, with that, just because I think too many of the logos that I ended up coming across and searching for on Google search images, they're just too small. and then it's not made for the file sizes that I needed them to be within. And so I ended up finding the right file size without a white background, just completely just the logo itself, and in great high quality on stick PNG. So here are some Adobe Creative Cloud alternatives. If you're very new and you're kind of just using these trainings or not ready yet to financially invest in the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, which I completely understand, and it can get very expensive if you're not using it every single day. Here are some like Creative Cloud alternatives, especially for Photoshop. I've heard really great things about Photopea. I've heard amazing things about GIMP. But just making sure you do a little bit more research on which one's going to be the best for you, because for, from image editing to painting, GIMP is really great. However, if you kind of want to create like digital art, so a lot more editing, and as well as like, um, creating a range of different kind of, art editing to your photos, then Photopea is going to be really great. And the thing about these two is, or even a lot of these alternatives on these lists of apps, is that they're very close in structuring how they are to the original Adobe app. So I've used Photoshop, and the way that Photopea is kind of set up, it's very close. And if you end up wanting to use a lot of the high quality features of Photoshop and you want to make that transition from Photopea to Photoshop, it's really seamless. A lot of the tools look very similar, and they're placed in similar areas as well. So, start here if you want to start anywhere, without like kind of breaking the bank. So thank you so much. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to actually answer your questions in person. Again, if you do have any questions, please email Michael or email me. And I can't wait to help you guys kind of create better product photos and, make a great kind of digital marketing with your smartphone photography. Thank you so much. Have a great day.